Welcome, lovely one, to the Meant for More podcast. My name's Lisa Clifford, and I am building the world's most empowering Meant for More movement, leading millions of heart-led purpose seekers from feeling insignificant to invincible. So I truly hope you enjoy this next episode. And welcome, Bill. It's no surprise that Bill is one of my very close friends, but not in proximity. He is almost on the other side of the world in a very glamorous spot called Palm Springs. So they get to have him. But Bill, thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful podcast. And let's get stuck into you, as we like to say in Yorkshire. What is the moment? And there's maybe many moments where you felt you are meant for more. You know, when you find yourself in a position and you just think, I'm either playing too small or I'm not going for something that I want, or you're about to go for it.
Yeah. I kind of gave this question of yours a little bit of thought. And, I didn't set out to say, I want to work within the experience and realm of, helping people regulate their nervous system. That's what I'm setting out to do.
Yeah, you don't lie in bed as a child thinking, when I grow up.
Right. I'm going to help regulate people's nervous system.
If only you had thought about it sooner, you'd have got to more people. But anyway.
Right. So it didn't happen like that for me, as that part of, understanding, of course, that I did feel like I didn't know what I was meant for, but I knew I was meant for something different. I do remember some like real early childhood memories of a particular moment I was about 8 years old, and we were driving down a highway during the pitch dark, and we came across a really horrible car accident. And it was the car hit a tree. The car was filled with young people, young teens, it seemed. And I remember getting my mom pulling over the car, and my sister was in the car with us. And the two of them, my sister was older than I am, and they get out of the car and they're helping these people who are kind of a little bit all over the place. And I just remember feeling called to get out of the car to go sit by this one young man who was perched up by a tree. And he was in pretty bad shape. And I just remember just naturally sitting with him and telling him he was going to be okay. I'm telling him that the fire department was on the way, the ambulance was on the way. I could hear the sirens. I was telling him, "Do you hear the sirens?" And I was like, "Yeah, your friends are over there," pointing out where his friends were, which, just kind of help him calm down.
How old were you?
About 8 years old, maybe. And I do remember that being a real important moment in my life where even in the sort of cacophony of what was happening around me, I remained calm in this. I wasn't freaked out or, worried about things. I knew to help, I guess, calm him down, as it were. And so I think then after I finished my college, I moved into New York City, and I was working a construction job. I was in a restaurant. I was having like a lot of like kind of like odd jobs, but at the same time, I was taking classes and courses in neurological linguistic programming. I became a hypnotherapist. I became a massage therapist. I was completely, interested in that sort of realm of work. And in those days, it was called complementary health sciences.
Yes.
Right? They don't even call it that anymore. Right now, they call it alternative medicine.
Yeah.
And I became an herbalist in my early 20s as well, or studied herbalism then. And so I felt that was like the idea of being called or meant for more. I didn't know what I was meant for yet. And during the height of the AIDS crisis, I started working in hospice. It was like that. This is what I knew I could do for my community. So I started linking up the the body work and the hypnotherapy and the hospice work, and just doing what I could for and with people. So so as I was doing that, I suddenly could, like, oh, I could do one less job to help make money, because this other job that was passionate about started to fulfill that need. And so the call for knowing that I was meant for something more was real. But in my early as a young man, I don't think I really had a mentor to help guide or mold or direct how to become something more. And so I had to do that in my own sort of way. And later on, studying with SUNDOOR and Peggy Dillon, and learning the Firewalk, learning breathwork, learning different modalities of meditation. I started studying Buddhist meditations in the 90s. And so while I knew I was called to do something more, again, I didn't have that guide of, well, how do you do this? Now there are schools and camps, and it's an industry all of here now, where people actually sort of pick a study to understand more of this work, and really become dynamic leaders and therapists.
Mm. One of the things that I've known you since 2009,
Mm-hmm.
and we hit it off instantly. So I'm going to try not to divulge things that I know about you that maybe only I should know about you. So fingers crossed. But one of the things that I love about you is you are always on the horizon of bettering yourself. And as though you know in your soul, you're here for a reason. And I hear that play out in your pushing yourself. Like, how long did it take you to train to be a doctor, a Chinese medicine doctor, an acupuncturist?
Yeah, so and even in that, I knew I was having a moment in my life where I was doing the corporate firewalks here in the U.S. I was doing firewalks for American Express, Charles Schwab, PG&E. I did the television show Survivor, their first season, last episode. I was setting up firewalks for the United Bank of Switzerland. I was doing really big events.
On stages with Jack Canfield and like
Yeah,
actually.
Marianne Williamson, all, yeah, really big top notch speakers. And I was doing firewalks for thousands of people at a time. So it was really big, and I was like, this is it. I'm going to be cooking along here with this one. And then September 11th came around, and horrible experience, horrible event in the world's history, and it radically changed my life, in that there was no longer those corporate events never came back to the magnitude they once were. They would fly out entire companies to remote locations and have these spectacular week-long events, and those just don't exist anymore. So when that happened, I had to reshift myself again, and figure out what was I going to be doing. And so that's when I added on, okay, I think I need to go to medical school, something that I was always wanted to do, but never again having that sort of guide or mentor when I was a younger man. And so I went back to school. I went to med school. I did my pre-med in there. I was setting out to become an osteopath, and had a really interesting conversation with another friend who talked about acupuncture and Chinese medicine and herbal medicine. I'm like, oh, alternative medicine is really important to me. That's what I really want to be focused in there. So that's how I got into then going back to school, getting my master's in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and then right after that, just moving into a doctoral program and becoming a doctor now. And
How
so
long did all that take?
that was 4, 6, like 7, almost 7, 6 or 7 years of school that I just, yeah, and was working, of course, while I was all, doing school at the same time. So
You paid for yourself.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yes, I did.
So you paid for your study and to take care of yourself. Sorry to interrupt you. There's something that sprung to mind to say about all of that. And were you in your late 30s?
Yeah. Yeah, I was, considered to be a little bit older to go back to medical school.
I mean, what an inspiration to people to decide, I'm going to become a doctor in your late 30s, when most people have started on a career and thought, no, this is where I'm at. It's too late to do that. If I had my life again, I would do that. But you did it, and you're frowning at me as if to say, oh yeah, I never thought that. Did
Well,
you think that?
I think what was happening for me was I was surrounded by people who continue to say, keep diving in, keep learning, keep doing, keep moving on. I think you hit something here. I was surrounded by people who were also doing the work on themselves and bettering themselves. And I think if you fall into a place where you're surrounded by yourself with people who keep you in the person you were in your past and don't encourage learning, development, and acceleration, then you will always be at that base level. But when you're surrounding yourself with people who are doing the work and you're doing the work, they allow a relationship with you of a person of change, and they grow and develop with you. And some people and some friends might fall off because your behaviors change. What you're drawn to, the people you're networking with, socializing with, wanting to aspire to be with, are suddenly changing. And if those people who are in your life now aren't growing and doing with you at that level, they're going to fall off. It's just you can't be hanging out with the people who are just partying or not inspired in any day. You've got
Or even if they are doing that, but they can't see the you are growing into, and they
yeah
keep speaking to the you that you've moved away from. That is so often. I mean, I'm always really mindful when I'm speaking to somebody that I'm speaking to who the version of them that they've arrived at right now. I don't always get it right, but there's a way that we keep people trapped in who they were that they're trying to heal and grow out of. Well, I had a conversation with a friend only last weekend, and I'm pretty safe to say this because I don't think she'll listen to my podcast, but she kept asking me questions about, well, what about so and so from the past, or what about that situation from the past? And I kept having to move into a space that I have spent my time healing from. And I'm like, I'm future motivated. I am wedded to the person I'm growing into, not the person I'm growing out of. And so often we can be with people that want to continually talk about our past, instead of help us envisage and create our future.
right
And in that very exploration of talking about the past, we end up taking a step back, don't we? Because in some way we relive it. So then we reactivate those cells. I mean, you'd say more about this because you know the science behind it, but we
yeah
reactivate those cells, and then we become, I think, we can get stuck in those behaviors or those characteristics, those thought patterns that we have to really push ourselves back out of into the future us that we're being.
yeah
Can you put language and sense and science around what I've just said?
yeah so there's
Dr. Bill Bastian, please.
yeah this is so there are people in your lives, and sometimes it can happen in family situations as well where so I'm the youngest, right, of a large family. And so I have this experience sometimes, and it's not happening now, but it was happening probably in my 30s or so, where some members of my family were still keeping me as the little kid, they not in a horrible, not in a purposeful way, in a loving way. They were still thinking me as their little brother, or and little brothers. Let's just go with that one, right?
Or even Baby Bill.
Baby Billy, or whatever they were, whatever it might have been, right? And so I had to call them out on that. I said, when you infantile our discussions about our childhood or our lives together, you're holding me in this experience in your mind of never moving on from growing and activating. Here I am as an adult. I own a house, I have a career, I manage things, and so there's nothing little brother about me in this, right? And
Mm.
so there's that dynamic that needs to shift as well. And you can either help people see who you are in that person today, and they have to kind of also, again, accept and become that. And so there's a psychology in that, where people are keeping you in that old pattern, right? And then because that's also a nice place and safe place for them as well. They are living in that past comfort as well.
Well,
And
because they're familiar. They're
mhm.
familiar because they know who they are in relationship to that version of you, but they don't know who they are in relationship to a growing version of you. Maybe is any of
Yeah,
that right?
yeah, I think that sounds right. It's just, it's again, and it's the family's kind of sometimes the hardest to kind of help, let you grow up. Um, like I just said, like, when I found myself surrounded by friends and people who I was inspired by, you should surround yourself with people who inspire you for sure. Oops.
That'll be one of your great. I know you've got great friends, so I
That
imagine.
is one of my great friends. Yes, calling
Well,
you
I'm going to guess. I'm not going to guess who it is or say it, but I imagine that that call was from somebody who massively sees your potential.
100%. And that's somebody also who, we've known. This is it's a dear friend. Um, someone that I've already known. I met wow, almost 8 years ago or so. And in the time that we've met, we have both grown extraordinarily and we have changed and things are happening. But we've been growing together because we've been doing the work together also and
Yeah.
sharing in that. So it's, that's
Yeah.
an important aspect.
Yeah. You know, right, there's so many things we've just said, and I want to go back to, I've written down what we'll move on to, but I want to go back to what happens inside us. Is it that it reactivates our cells, our body, our mind, and our program when somebody is talking to an older version of us, a version of us that's
Mm.
moved through the work? Is it that we then reactivate that version of us and have to work harder to move back into a future orientated self? Is that true, or am I
I,
just
no, I
speaking
think
from how I
you're there.
feel?
But I think what's important is the nature of the relationship that you have with that person, and then also the time you spend with that person. So if that's somebody that you're living with, and they're reminding you, hmm?
But I'm talking about what happens within us when somebody
Yeah,
does
getting,
that
yeah,
to us.
yeah. So
Yeah.
if you're in relationship with somebody, you live with them, right, and they're holding you in this mistake, right, that you did, that you're very well aware of, but you've done the work, you've done the rehabilitation. We have to allow that rehabilitation to be a real thing, to rehabilitate you, to move you into a level of understanding of what was wrong, what I fixed, what systems of tools I've put into place now to better myself. So if I've recognized that my behaviors were bad or not productive, I then go and see a specialist, a coach, a psychologist, or whatever it might be. I just start going to the gym. I start taking care of myself better. You can't keep holding me in where I was 6, 8 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, right? If you keep reminding me and telling me of how I messed up, or saying, "Well, you really were in a really dark place, and I was there to help you get out of that dark place. Boy, were you in a bad place." You can't keep reminding me of the dark place and bad place I was in. You have to actualize me in the place that I am now, where I'm doing better, I'm achieving, I'm feeling good. And so, yes, there is something that's happening in the mind and in that brain when you're with that person and you're getting that, chemical dump, the gratifications, experiences, the acknowledgments of all of that, and the way the mind is working in creating the new memories with you, right? I want to remember us now in this time of, how we supported each other, not, oh yeah, and while I was trying to better myself, you were cutting me down, right? So there's our brain has this neuroplasticity with it, and where we can kind of change our realities for ourselves. But you got to let me change that reality. Otherwise, I don't know how we can be together anymore.
Yeah, I think
Did that answer your question there?
it did. It answered more. I think as well, I was thinking about what happens to us biologically and in terms of our mind when when somebody talks to an older version of us. Yes, they shouldn't do it, but what actually happens within us? Does it slow down our
I'll tell you what,
momentum that we're
in
in?
medicine, when I'm working with a patient who has 4-stage cancer or has a very difficult diagnosis, you don't inspire their healing by telling them, there's no hope. You inspire their healing by letting them be aware of, like, how to appreciate even whatever moments you have, whatever time you have, right? So there's no real science on this one about, like, your attitude towards your illness, but I've never heard a doctor give negative feedback to someone. Oh, just be sad and depressed. They say, oh, try to be optimistic. Look to what's around you, right? So there is a mindset matters on all of that as well.
Mm, mm.
And so if
And
you're with
then,
somebody who's giving you that negative mindset, they're not your friend.
yeah, I think I was thinking about what we experience when someone is talking to um, a version of us that we've grown out of, what actually happens within us, and how that takes us back rather than forwards. And actually, it's only one person's responsibility about that journey.
Hmm. That's on you. If
Yeah.
if you've done the work, right, that and you've moved on with yourself, one other element of doing the work of change is to deactivate those triggers, right? So that those when people remind you of where you once were and that you weren't good enough or you weren't doing something enough or whatever it might have been, you if that trigger is still activated to bring you down, oh yeah, it was that's I'm a terror. Who am I kidding? What that trigger is still there. So that's the work you need to do, is to kind of remove that trigger so it has no influence on that.
And that I get. I think that often, though, regardless of whether somebody's activating a trigger, I think often we're talking to a younger version of the person that's in front of us. We're remembering who they were last week instead of who's actually in front of them now. And I don't mean like, oh, did they fall down last week or did they do something bad last week? But I think too often we're not acknowledging the the presence of who's in front of us, the version of who's in front of us. We just know, oh, it's Lisa. And then we speak to our memory of Lisa rather than the
Yeah,
Lisa that's in front, or my memory of Bill. Like when we set up this call, I could be speaking to the old you, but what I really try to do is speak to the you that's in front of me now,
right. Yeah,
and interpret you. And I think that requires us to be in our consciousness, doesn't it? So much more. We have to have to consciously look at Bill and listen to what you're saying now and be curious about what that is rather than what I think you're saying based on what I thought you knew.
right.
You keep mentioning the work, and whilst I'm pretty sure, knowing you as well as I do, that I know what it is, what does doing the work on yourself mean?
So the work is you're in charge of your nervous system, right? And this is where I get into, like, the whole, regulating your nervous system. So the work
Hang
is
on, before hang on, we need to go back a bit because we might need an explanation. How would you describe our nervous system? Because the nervous system has only really been something familiar to me over the last few years in the
Sure.
way that I see it now. So can you just break down what the nervous system is and then say about the work?
Yeah. So, when we're living in this kind of state, sometimes where people are living in a state of alarm on a more regular basis, right? And some things have to do with some just people's sort of mental disposition, right? And so for people who like are like it's no secret here, right? And go, I'm an ADHD kind of guy. Like I've got, I'm doing multiple things at a time, and very little gets done sometimes, and I'm like kind of like always in a little bit of a hurry, hurry, hurry kind of thing. Yeah.
Are you ADHD?
And yeah, it's absolutely. Since I was a child, right? I've always had this little ADHD experience going on in my life. Yeah. When I was younger, they talked about putting me on in special classes. My mother was adamantly against it. She's like, no, he needs to have a proper education, and not in those years you were kind of put into this, you were marginalized as a difficult student, or, so you were put into like the difficult student groups where you just played and did other things. You didn't get the education. So my mother's very adamant, like, no, you can educate him. And so, that was one really great, great thing my mother did, was advocate for my education.
Mm.
So the regulating of the nervous system, right? And that part of us is the recognizing where we are in that. And so back to that state of alarm piece, right? I'm always looking around. So I grew up in a big family. So there's a lot of loud big experiences happening around me, even as a kid. So I would always be looking for that place of quiet. Where's that place of where, kind of got to move away from the stimulation, as it were. And so similarly, I'm just kind of jumping in like sort of a couple of categories here. There are people who grew up in trauma, big trauma, real trauma, right? Abusive trauma. And so they're vigilantly looking for the way out, right? So people who are living with PTSD have a hyperactive experience within the nervous system of alertness, looking for kind of like what could go wrong, got to find safety, where am I going to move to? And so that nervous system is on big alert. So there's a lot of adrenaline being dropped all day, the cortisol is being dropped all day, the mental, looking around for safety can be exhausting, right? And so when you have a regulated nervous system, moms are notorious for this one, right? They're like, how are the children? Where's everybody? They're constantly thinking and worrying about, is everyone okay? What's going on there, right? And so there's a hypervigilance that goes on there. I have this one patient. She's got 5 kids, and she's been they're older now, right? But I think the youngest one's like 17 or so. But at the same time, she's still like hyperactively engaged in their well-being. And so in the work that we're doing is the regulating of the nervous system is saying, okay, you don't have to be hypervigilant about these things. It's time for you to learn how to relax a little bit. So I got her on an herbal regimen that helps to calm the nervous system on that, makes things easier. I could go into the Chinese medicine aspects of it, but that would take too long to kind of explain. But we're just moving the qi differently, creating balance in the body. And some Western medicines do that, but they do that in a different way, where they kind of make people feel a little bit more flatlined. Whereas with herbal regimens, or even different tools and practices like breathwork, meditation, and whatnot, to help regulate the nervous system, suddenly it's interesting is like when people are in a hyper alert state in their nervous system and they're living at that level, and you teach them about nervous system regulation, they suddenly will feel things that are not they're accustomed to. So one of the things that I get back is the feedback of, oh, I'm bored now, or I feel I feel quiet in my body, but I don't understand what's happening, right? I don't feel as sharp as I once was. But it's the part of it is like to feel the nervous system finally relaxing a little bit more, where you're not in that state of alertness, you're not in that fight or flight experience, or more commonly we refer to that fight or freeze experience, where you're being held thing. So we're changing the way the chemistry of the body is cascading, and not releasing the adrenaline so much, but releasing serotonin, dopamine, and just relaxing the body more. So there's a different, balancing act that happens there. I kind of went along a little bit of string there, tangent there, but that's the ADHD. But we were able to go for vast topics all along. I have to put you on hold for one quick second. There's opportunities knocking at my door. Done everything I can to make us not be interrupted for this call, and here we are.
It's okay because I can cut that bit out.
Sorry about that. Where were we?
Nervous system and ADHD and
Did I cover that
yeah,
part?
you
I
did.
kind of jumped around a little bit in my explanation, I think.
No, you did. It's perfect. The work.
The work, yeah.
What is the work?
What is the work? Good no, good Lord, yeah. The work can be so many different things for so many people. But the work has to start with the internal investigation of where and who you are and what self care looks like. And we bop that term around self care, self care, self care, and some people take different liberties about what that means to them. Self care for some people is just like, oh, I'm going to go on a vacation, I'm going to drink margaritas, and that's my self care. To me, that's not self care. Self care is a daily ritual for me. It's meditation, it's exercise, it's community, it's being with important people in my life, and making less time for people who are just not activated in their lives. So it's this the work is what you're doing for yourself. So it's breathwork, meditation. It's the toolbox that you're using so that when you are confronted with an experience that might activate your nervous system in a more alarmed way, you have tools to go to. And some of the tools can be psychological tools that are used. So, for example, I had to learn a tool in order to develop my ability to work with people who are dominating narcissists in the workplace, right? And so, not so much in this day and age here, but in the past, when you start to recognize that, for me, when people raised their voice, started yelling, and particularly, a narcissist who's gaslighting in an experience and they're yelling, I would shut down. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm shutting down. I'm getting nervous. I'm getting upset. So I had to investigate, where is that coming from? What's that trigger about? What is that? And I did the investigation. I worked actually with a psychotherapist on this part of to really help understand where's that coming from? And it came from a real old story, like in the way back part of my mind. And I said, yeah, that was happening. Okay. But that's not happening anymore. And I'm not that little boy anymore. And so what's the tools, what's the work that I need to look at to investigate when somebody's coming at me and they're raising their voice? I can't be cowering down or shutting down. I need to kind of match or meet or rise up here. And so one of the quick examples I learned was a technique called the gray rock. Do you know this technique?
I might do when you say it, but right now it's going to be a surprise.
Yeah. So the gray rock is this, technique that when you're dealing with somebody who's kind of like that narcissist or someone who's yelling or whatever, that they need fuel for the argument, right? And even if it's just sounding accusatory, if it's sounding like they're upset or angry, if you keep going at them, if you keep defending yourself, or if you keep debating with them, that's fueling their fire.
Mm.
And the gray rock sort of technique just says that you give very short responses, which are, oh, oh, I could see where you might think that. Oh, gosh. And you don't feed back anything more. You let them run out of things to say. And then you can say, okay, so here's something else that we might be able to look at and, try to bring back more reasoning within the way you're having a conversation with them. But the gray rock is more of short, quick, responsive, oh, okay. Because again, when you're fighting or arguing with somebody that's either a narcissist or gaslighting you, they're going to come back around. Oh, see, and that's what I'm talking about. Or they're going to try to draw it back onto you again, where it's like the gray rock says, oh, I hold none of this. This is yours. Right. And so that, along with other little nuances within that piece of work there, is, to recognize that when somebody's coming at and they're upset, I can recognize, oh, they're upset about something, and either I've done something wrong, and if I have, I can own it. But if it's not about me, but they're just upset and they're sharing it onto me. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This isn't my monkey. This isn't my circus. But they're, and then you have to ask, are you asking for my help, or are we just downloading information here? And if they're
Yeah,
just
get
downloading
clear.
information, don't engage. Just listen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're not asking for a tennis match. They're asking to hit some balls.
Right.
And then there's also that aspect where people often, when you're sharing an example, and then the person that's listening, then in some way, so for example, I might say, yeah, so tonight I'm going to have roasted vegetables for dinner, and then the other person goes, oh no, 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 I have to have meat, and somehow they make what you're saying be something that they disagree with, and it's important not to.
Yeah.
That's a thing that a lot of people, I've noticed a lot of people doing these days. And I don't know if it's because they're so in their own minds, because they're so busy and they've got a lot on. But when you're just sharing your own experience, how people defend themselves in a mirror that is just your experience.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think there's I don't know what got me onto that, but I think that I've noticed it more now than I've ever noticed before, that um and I think it's to do with how time poor we are, how instant everything is, how people are um imagining what you're going to say next instead of just listening to what's being said. And I think that plays a big part in it.
Yeah.
So
Knowing
tell me,
when to talk is important,
knowing.
when not to talk. You don't have to fill the.
I'm thinking that when you do the work, it's also about what you're not doing. So it's in the stuff that you are doing, like your meditation, your great friends, your great connections. But I'm guessing in that work, are you stopping doing things that you work against you?
Oh, sure.
I bet the
Yeah.
list is
It,
equal, isn't it?
it can be, yeah. Right. And for me, it's distractibility. I will, before I can sit down and do this work, I have to clean the kitchen or do this other kind of whatever it might be. And so I allow myself to be distracted rather than focus, going, the dishes can wait, the laundry can wait, whatever. This is my time. So for me, the work also is not about the personal tuning of the self, but also the physical world that we live in that work. Boy, I fought this one for a long time. Is this about making a daily list of the things you have to do or get done? That's the work. That's all that keeps you on track. Again, it's about the tools that help you with the work. There's things you have to be mindful of in the physical world to help you keep on track for that. So a part of the tools in the work is, what are you using? And so I've just recently got introduced to using virtual assistants for some of the administrative work I do in the office. And so I used to get on Canva and create my own advertisements and then ship them over to wherever. And now just cut out the work that's taking up your time. You said you just mentioned a minute ago about being sort of time hungry or time sensitive or have lack of time, time deprivation. I forget how the exact term you just used.
Time poor. Yeah.
Time poor, right? So
Mm.
become time rich and delegate work to other people that will help you. In fact, there are people in your life who will help you go do something or take care of something just because they love you.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to ask for help on those things.
I think when I think about doing the work, yes, there's the meditation, there's the going for a walk, there's the keeping my mind on things that are positive, keeping my mind on the facts. But there's also the eating healthily and the drinking water. But in the not list, stopping eating gluten. Because whilst I'm doing the work, I've also got to stop doing the things that undermine the work. So gluten and sugar, not have conversations with people that don't see life the way I see it, and they're not really part of my daily life. Yes. Or saboteurs. Also doing the work is not sabotaging.
Mm.
If part of my business model is, well, part of my need is to get more business in, then knowing that a saboteur is not returning calls quickly enough, or or being lethargic or tired. So in
Yeah.
doing the work, the work is, as you've rightly said, it's that commitment to helping yourself. And whatever people put in there, for some people it could be yoga, for some people it could be listening to their favorite music, but whatever it is that they consciously do that supports
Yeah.
their nervous system and their being.
And so one of the things you just said about, the saboteur is, the not returning that call in time or letting that work go until the last minute, right? Like, right. And then, but so that's an old system experience within the nervous system to tell you, like, oh, I only work best under pressure because I'm addicted to the adrenaline that's going to be released while I have to get this done in now a time sensitive moment when I had 3 weeks to get this done. But now I'm waiting for 3 days before it's due, or even the day before it's due, to rattle this out. And right. And so we're psychically addicted to that pressure, to work under pressure, to work under, like, I gotta fire this out, right? Yeah, I think because I'm addicted to that adrenaline rush, then it makes my brain work faster. So I'm like, yeah, I'm on this now, right? Rather than understanding that in a regulated nervous system and a keeping of the tasks of things you have to do, piecemeal things in that 3 weeks time of when if something's due, that, okay, so for every day, I'm just going to work on this for 15 or 20 minutes every day, just a little bit. I still need to do a little bit. Setting a timer is really important as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just set a timer, 15 minutes. I'm going to work on this for 15 or 20 minutes. And I'm just going to do it a little bit today, even if it's just like work this outline or flush that idea out, or, put this, whatever the work is that's due, get it done, get it moving. Oh gosh, that reminds me, I've got to get something from, whomever. I better line that up now so that I'm not rushed later. Like, something, a mistake on my end is not an urgency on your end. It's my mistake, and now I'm inflicting urgency on you. That's not okay.
Where would you be if you hadn't have invested in the work for yourself?
Don't know how to speak to that one, I think, because I don't know what that would look like. I don't know if I would be alive today if I hadn't invested in the work in myself earlier on. I think that I dodged a lot of influences that could have taken me down, a different direction for sure. So I'm blessed to have found my tools at an early age in life. I just recently was working with a new patient who he's like maybe in his late 20s or so, and he's made some really difficult choices, not positive choices. And so I took the time with him to, help him, remind him. And, and a lot of it, he was holding blame from his mother and father about whatever, blah, 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 right? And I go, yeah, that's great. I mean, you can blame your parents until you're about 14, 15 or 16 years old. And then there's a time where you have to take command and control of your own life. And so instead of looking to his parents as the examples of his blunders, I asked him to, in a meditation in this work that I was doing with him, I said, and this type of work where I said, call upon your ancestors, the grandparents, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, the people who have, moved through the lineage of your timeline that brought you here today. Not necessarily your biological mother and father, but your ancestors, and call upon them for strength and wisdom. Their information is in your DNA. It's in your memory. And he had a real incredible breakthrough moment where he realized that he was the commander of his own destiny. He could be this person that he wants to become. And so, sometimes we need somebody outside of our friends or family to, nudge us in the direction again.
I think so many people go through their entire lives blaming parents, and
Yeah.
that conversation that you've just had with him has just put him 30 years ahead of anybody else.
We
Because
hope.
when you know, when you're told, when you know, oh, I'm responsible for how I feel. I'm responsible for my environment. I'm responsible for my money. So however little or as much as I've got is actually down to me. It's so empowering because you just think, oh, well, I can spend less time blaming and more time actioning, can't you?
Yeah.
I
You know,
remember,
go
go
ahead.
on. Well, I was just going to say, I remember it must have been about, it'd be 14 years ago. And I was in like a little relationship. It wasn't a big relationship, but I liked the person. And, but I wasn't a priority, I don't think. And I remember an older, wiser gentleman saying to me, Lisa, who takes care of you?
Mm.
And I said to him, oh, and I didn't get the answer off him for months later. And I was so miserable once he'd asked me that because I thought, nobody's taking like
Hmm.
child, nobody's there for me. Nobody. And then it was a few months later, he said, you know whose job it is? And I went, whose? And he went, yours. But for months, I'd been stewing and being a victim to this idea that nobody's taking care of me. And then when
Hmm.
he said it's your job, first of all, it was a slap in the face, but then it was liberating because then
Yeah.
the power doesn't belong with anybody else, as in they don't have the power to upset me by not taking care of me because it isn't their job. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, what were you going to say?
Just this, similarly, like if you're living in the past of like, oh, if only my parents had done this, if only they did that, why didn't they do this? Oh, I was, so held back or repressed or whatever the you want to go with, and I will say that there was a time in my life where I held that notion that, gosh, my parents could have, nourished and nurtured me, better and whatever it was. And then I went the other way and I'm like, wait a minute, let's look at what my parents were up against at that time raising five children. What were they up against and doing, to better themselves as a family? And when I started to recognize the sacrifices that they had made for five kids, and I started to have these micro memories of the positive and the good and the joy rather than the repression or the upset or that the house was out of control. Like suddenly I shifted like, wow, the house was out of control in a sense of that was amazing. Like we were that house if again, it's like I'm the youngest of five, right? My brothers and sisters are pretty much quite a bit older than I am. But I grew up in this time where if you in the neighborhood, if you didn't know where your kid was, you called Mrs. Bastian, and my mom either knew where your kid was or your kid was at our house. That's the house I grew up in, so it was like it felt chaotic. But when I look at it in an objective way, going, oh my gosh, my mom and my dad created this sanctuary for these teenagers to hang out at the house where they were safe and governed over rather than at the parks or wherever driving around doing whatever could have brought in danger or upset for some people. So when I changed the lens that you look at it and try to see like, oh, what I thought was a negative or oh, I got to get out of here really was like, wow, that was an incredible sacrifice that my parents did to create something beautiful.
Yeah, I think we look at what have they not done rather than what have they done, don't we? We look at whether, and if we think about it, I mean, you and I don't have children. But if you imagine if the version of us 20, 30 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, what did we know? And yet we're judging our parents for what they knew. And they're the ones that had guts to have children,
Yeah.
bring them up and do their best. We are so, I mean, I'm saying we, I mean, generally speaking, and it's not everybody, and it's probably just me, so judgmental
Mm-hmm.
of but we judge with the age that we are now, not the age that they were, don't we? We kind of, and actually, do you know what I want to ask you as well is, I think back to that, you getting out the car at 8 or 9 years old and sitting with the boy that was slumped against the tree, and somehow intuitively you knew where to place his focus, you knew how to soothe him, you knew how to hold space for him. You knew that you didn't just want to sit and watch. You were never a spectator. You were always a contributor and participant. And so, do you believe, and the question already sounds leading, do you believe that we're all born with a purpose?
I think that we are all born for purpose. I don't know if we're born for a specific purpose, but you're here for a time, and and you're here for a reason. Um, that's where the work helps you discover who and what you're meant to serve, and where you're meant to be in the world. Some people, I think it's about they're able to follow their passion, and it's able to provide them with a life and an income and a delicious life experience. And there are people who follow their passions, but they need a supplemental job to allow that passion to still flourish. And so I'm not so sure if you're born into a purpose to
Sorry to interrupt. I think that purpose doesn't have to be your job. It can just
no,
be
of
what
course.
flows through you, can't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I still think like you are here to experience this life and to find what makes your, as you always eloquently say, what makes your spirit dance and your heart sing. It's just like, you have to find that. You have to find what is that for you, you know, and it's in your everyday. And that's also when we get more into the tools again, that again, this will like, a mindful practice. It sounds so trite, because it's used so boldly now, and just so, or easily, like, oh, mindful, be mindful. Well, what does that even mean? And one of the things is what you had said about, you are mindful that when you are in the presence of somebody, you're in the presence of who they are today in this moment. And that's a mindful experience, to recognize that this person is an they're presenting themselves to you in the who they are in this moment, and you're allowing the opportunity for them to expand into another person again, and more. So mindfulness is an important tool, and to really be present in every day. So if you're feeling without purpose, I think you're not practicing mindfulness then also, because purpose is in the moment of whatever you're doing right now, even if it's when you feel stuck at home somewhere because you have to take care of, a disabled parent, or whatever it is, and you're feeling trapped in something, whatever it might be, whatever the situation is. When you become more mindful, that's the only time you'll be able to see the way out, is when you become mindfully present to what you're doing in that.
Yeah, that consciousness, isn't it? That when you're mindful of the moment, then you can't be consumed with making assumptions.
Yeah. If I'm doing this task through bitterness and hatred and despise and disgust, I will stay in that place of disgust and negativity. Even if I quit that job and walk out the door, I'm going to still be bitter about it in that next situation that I am. One of the things I tell my medical assistants that work in my office, and I'm realistic with them. I say, this isn't the job you're going to retire from, you know, but in that time, what can you learn to do to better yourself for the next experience that you're moving into?
Great question.
Right. So I need you to be mindfully present to learn, do, behave, experience, and and you usually work in hospitality as well. Where that expression, antennas up, right, so that you can sense the need and anticipation of somebody else before they even know that they need or anticipate it. Right, that's a gift, but you have to develop that.
Yeah, you can't walk around daydreaming. You have to be present. So
Right,
present.
otherwise you can miss the cue.
And do you think that with so many distractions like our phone and social media and the speed in which we can digest information, with the short form videos, information, the accessibility to buying things in a heartbeat and having it delivered the next day. Do you think it's impacted on our concentration span?
Yeah. What you just said there about our ability to, what did you say? Like digest information or get information, right? I think that we have an ability now with this, with the way social media works and where, the way just information is being passed on. We have the availability to quickly understand concepts, but you're not going to grok deeply the information unless you do the work and you really put your nose to the grindstone and do the study. You don't. I come across people who claim to do breath work. They took a weekend course in breath work, and they are certified now in doing all this breath work. And it's just like, oh gosh, in my opinion, the work that you need to really be a guide and a facilitator and for someone to do really cathartic work with breath work doesn't happen over a weekend course. And so you're going to get the concept. You'll understand the power and the tool, the way it works. But now you've been given this tool. So now you have to learn how to become the artist, right? You can give me the paintbrush, but until I learn how the bristles of that brush move in every stroke I want, then I become the master. So I think you can understand concepts quickly, but in today's day and age, but it doesn't make you an expert.
No, but I think also I'm interested in what quick form information does to our attention span and our capability of being patient and really being present. I think I'm just wondering if you feel like in the way that information is being presented to us, whether it's short circuiting our mind with presence and patience. Yeah.
Yeah. So this again might, this is a generational thing, I think. You and I grew up with books and textbooks, and
And a phone that was attached to the wall that you had to be in for a call.
we if you wanted to find something out, I felt, lucky enough, I guess. My parents had the Encyclopedia Britannica, in our house. My one brother and I would, on a rainy Saturday, we would just take out the encyclopedias and just like and read the encyclopedia. We'd have them all over the floor, and we'd be reading all these different things. But that information was, kind of fun to do in that way, right? And so I'm old school. I like holding paper. I like books. I like reading out of books. I like attending, courses and classes and workshops. And so this, the way a newer generation today is learning, they grew up with a cell phone in their hands at early childhood. They grew up knowing how to navigate, different websites faster than I can even do today.
But do you think it's impacted our patience and the way we're being present? So I get what's happening, but do you
Yeah.
think it's having a knock-on effect in how we hold space for people? Are people able to, like those that are getting information that quickly, are they able to be present and
If they're
patient?
using the tools that are available, they still have to know how to tap into the timeliness of using the tools to drop in and again center themselves, be mindful of it. So the answer is yes. I think people are able to get information and learn things quicker and faster. But to what depth are they going to be doing that?
I think what I'm talking about is the damage that having so much information at hand, and we can have it, the impact it has on us with our ability to hold space and listen. So what I mean is, somebody who's used to downloading loads of information into the brain. I was talking to somebody not that long ago, and that they could not keep their body still. They wanted to speed me up. They wanted, like, right, what's the end? What's the end? It was difficult for them, and somebody else was interrupting me and wanting to give me my answers to get it done. And I see that as, and I love these people, but I see that as an impact of the people are used to receiving information really quickly, but when they're with a human being and it comes to listening, they want to use the same application that they would to the phone to the human. And so I see that this speed in which we're getting information and how disposable everything is and how quick everything is having an impact on people being able to listen and be patient and hold space, that naturally it's causing a less patient human. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah. It's there. The information, I think, has to get digested and marinated a little bit sometimes, rather than just give me the bullet points. Everyone wants just the bullet points now.
I think it has made people not listen in the same way, not be present in the same way, because other information is. I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole with it, but I think going right back to the ingredients in this call, which is all about doing the work on yourself and knowing what it, the other side, what's at the other side. When I do the work on myself, I can be present for people that I love. And actually, what else is life about if you can't be present for the people that you love and be with them, but you have to do the work on yourself so that you can be present, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And
that,
so,
that gets down to the bones of all of it. Is
yeah,
being present. Did you know your calling? You had to be present to hear it.
yeah. I mean, I think it's the Buddhists, don't they, say that so many people can heal just by being listened to.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, I don't know where that one comes from, but yeah, I agree completely with that one.
But you can't be saying, right, well, then what happened? Can you move on? Yeah, yeah. What happened at the end? Yeah. Did this happen? Did this happen? Because I think that's what devices and short form information has
You
done
know,
to us. It's made us impatient and insistent.
yeah, I see that in healthcare a lot. I have patients come in who, I say, so tell me what's going on, and I don't interrupt them. I just listen. And I have so many come back, later saying, their Western doctors don't have that time or didn't even ask the question. So yeah, being heard helps you to get healed.
What have you got coming up that people can visit, attend? Have you got
Sure.
any open courses coming up?
Yeah, I have some. I'm working on a couple of things that are coming up into the fall. I'm working with people and helping to guide and coach them through microdosing of psychedelics right now. And so, in microdosing of psychedelics, you're taking a dosage that doesn't take you in an alternate experience. We call it a pre-threshold dosage, but it helps to regulate the nervous system a little bit more. And so I'm starting to offer that kind of coaching and guidance in there. I'm going to be holding a little open webinar of question and answers and kind of talk a little bit to people about that stuff in October. So on my website, I'll be posting that up there and having that there. So yeah.
When you get the dates,
Mm,
if you can get them to me,
yeah.
then I'll include it in
Okay.
the description of this and your
Sure.
website. And
Yeah.
so, since I've been speaking about doing the work for our nervous system in particular, can you give people a bit of wisdom or in closing, or a top tip that will support them to have as part of their work that they do
Yeah.
daily?
one of the things I try to tell people is to be aware of the triggers that take you out of being present, right? And so when you start to pay attention to the, oh, hey, wait, I'm not feeling present right now, or I'm feeling distracted, right? Rather than say, yeah, I don't feel present, people will say, yes, I was distracted, right? So know when you're feeling distracted, or you've been taken into a different direction, or your mood has changed in a way that doesn't feel good or comfortable anymore. When you start to pay attention to when that starts to happen or when it has happened, you develop that spidey sense of the pre-trigger experience. So you feel it coming, or you see it coming, or you actually see the person coming or the experience coming, right? And you know, oh, this, I need to be more present now, or I need to kind of like, mind the steering wheel here. And so what I ask people is, who's sitting in the throne of your awareness right now? And if it's the saboteur or the silly one, you got to move them out of that throne and put that mindful one, that sage, in your throne of your awareness and in your mindfulness moment. So that's what I try to kind of just touch base with people, is so that you can understand where's the pre-trigger before it even comes to me. Okay, steady the wheel. And I learned that through boating. You watch the water to see where the big gust of wind is coming. You see it on the water. You don't see the wind, but you see it on the reaction on the water. So now we're going to face the boat in a new direction into the wind, or utilize the wind in a way, rather than get pushed over or blown away by that wind. So watching it, knowing when it's coming before it gets to you is important.
I love that. You don't see the wind, but you see it on the water.
Right. So what does your ocean look like? That's mindfulness, right? We want to steady you. Everyone uses that metaphor. See a calm body of water, right? Okay. Well, what are you going to do with that calm body of water, right? That's when you're going to see the ripples in the wind, something in the distance coming. Oh, the water is telling me it's changing. The temperature of the water is changing, getting colder, getting too hot, whatever it might be. Well, you bring to the idea of this like calm water, that's the tool for you to pay attention to now. So you
Yeah.
don't get blown off your course. Oh, I see the storm is coming. Okay, let me ready the ship.
Yeah. And who's the captain? Is it the saboteur? Is
Right,
it the tired one? Or is it the sage? Or is it the inspirer? Or who's who's going to interpret what's
right.
happening to the
This,
water and then decide what's going to happen?
right. The saboteur is going to be the captain of the
Oh,
boat, see the storm coming, and it's going to open up all the hatches on the boat and the
we're going
doors
to
and
have a
everything,
lie down.
and that, right, and then go take a nap, right, to have a cup of tea, right. But the vigilant one, the sage, is going to go, oh, the storm's coming. Let's tighten up the hatches, batten down the hatches, as we would say, right. Let's change the sails on the boat, whatever it might be, right. Let's redirect the ship.
Yeah. 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 Oh, what a great note to finish on, Bill. Thank you so much. My cheeks are hurting. I've smiled at you so much, and um, I've loved this conversation. And I think that we'll have to have another one very soon. We can talk about triggers in the next one. We can go into more. We can have a whole podcast on triggers. And I
Yeah,
think
and
when we've
and
hung up, we'll
and
book that in.
minding the water. I think
Mind in the water, yeah.
like that one just sort of came up right in this moment. Of like, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
good.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Bill Bastian. Dr. Bill Bastian. You're welcome.